Alright, hello everyone, this is Mr. Marr with another tutorial, this time for Activity 4, and we're going to get started right now. I just got home from school, so I want to see if I can record a couple of these tutorials. Main downside of recording during the day right after school is usually I hear my neighbor's dogs barking a lot, so you're going to hear that in the background. Hope you don't mind. Alright, so we're going to do Activity 4. This is on mixing. So as you can see here, mixing is the process of adjusting audio and frequencies on each track so they blend well together. Much of this is done with the volume knob or the volume slider on each track, which are usually found in the mixer. We've got an example of an audio mixer here and a couple different programs how their audio works. So what we're going to do first is open one of the beats that we've made so far. So let's start with that. So at this point you have made, A1, A2, and A3. And not all of them are going to work great for this. If you're doing A2, you might need to add like a drum loop. If you're doing A3, you might need to add other sounds, maybe like a melody or something. I would actually suggest not doing A3 for this. But A1 or A2 would be good. If you did Activity 5, that would actually probably be the easiest one to do this with. So in the future, I might have you do A5 first. For this example, I'm going to do to remix my A1 beat. So that would probably be a good choice for a lot of you, unless you already did Activity 5. So to go and re-edit a beat, click here, 3 dots, and then open Project in the Studio. And we'll be able to go back in and edit. So on this sheet is actually a lot of kind of optional steps that you might not need to do at this point, but it's something we'll be building on and maybe returning to later. So I've got my Activity 1 beat. So the first thing you're going to want to do is decide which instrument will be the main focus. And we're going to set that instrument as loud as we like without clipping or distortion. So let me just press play and see what we got here. Cool. All right. I'm actually going to switch these two drum patterns. I just kind of like a little bit of that way. So I would say that the piano is kind of like my main focus here. So I'm going to turn everything else down. That's the step that the written instructions doesn't show, but the tutorial does show it. So I've got this here. I'm going to make my piano track kind of my lead melody. So I want this to be as loud as it can be without clipping or distortion. And depending on your internet speed, you'll see the volume bar here, which will show you how loud it's playing. So let's check this out. So you can actually see this is just a little bit under kind of here. If I turn it all the way up, and it's actually at a pretty good volume. If it were clipping, which is what we don't want, it would kind of look like this. So I'm going to just add some volume here. So the volume, the additional volume effects can make things louder. Don't do this though. So you see how just a second ago when I was playing that, it started to sound distorted. It was very loud, and actually if you see the volume meter, it turned red. That's called clipping. We don't want it to clip. So you really just want it as loud as it can go without clipping. So just kind of the regular turn it all the way up is fine. I could definitely hear those little melodies. So the next step is we're going to pick just kind of one thing at a time to bring up and blend. So I would say the next thing I probably want to set is my foreground drums. So that's how we're breaking it down, is there's foreground sounds and background sounds. You want to decide what your foreground sounds are. So those are the things that you want the audience or the listener to hear. So I've got my foreground melody here. I'm going to add foreground drums next. So I'm going to turn these drums up until they blend with the piano track. Cool. Probably turn up just a drop. Depending on the style that you're doing, sometimes the drums are actually like the loudest thing, except for the vocals, of course. So we got our foreground melody, foreground drums. Next, let's start setting the 808 pattern. So the 808 is kind of like a foreground melody, so we want to make sure that that's still heard. I've actually heard a couple different remixes of this from my students, and I tend to really like it when the 808 is turned up. So let's turn up that 808 to blend. All right, cool. So I've got that added in. I could probably make that a little stronger. I might actually even want to back off the piano drop. But again, the 808 and the piano, those are kind of like the main sounds along with the drums. So now we're going to add in our background sounds. So the background sounds need to be loud enough to be heard without covering up anything else. So let's add the synth pad here next. So I might keep it about there. It's not too loud, but again, we want to make sure we hear the other tracks stronger. Next, we have this clap track. That would be kind of like a background percussion. So let's mix that in. So since I have it lining up with my drum track, I'm going to actually just mute this so I can hear and make sure it's okay. Cool. So the way that it's written, it's going to blend with the drum track and just kind of add a little extra layer onto it. So just kind of emphasizing that backbeat a little bit. The last thing we have is this little transition sound. It's called a sweep. So we're going to add that in. Definitely don't want that too loud because it's not kind of the main focus. It's some background sounds. So. Kind of about there. Actually sounds pretty good. At this point, you're done. So that's activity 4. Again, the things that I'm looking for are foreground melody, foreground drums or percussion, and also background melody, background percussion. If you're remixing something other than A1, you might need to add another loop to make sure that you have, again, foreground melody, foreground drums, background drums, and background melody. All of those should fit in there. So again, to save this, you're going to want to save as and not actually save over this. So click File, click Save As, and we're going to save it as A4. So now I'm not deleting my A1 project, I still have that. This is just a remixed version of it. From there, you can click Share and turn it in. So there you go. That's all you need to do. On the written instructions, it gets into some of the more complicated mixing tools, filters and EQs, and also panning. We'll get to that later in the year probably. So let's just see if we can get those volume knobs set correct, and then you're all done. So that's all. See you next time.